Let's do the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架多一点传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
Have a seat.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute my microphone now.
Very good. Good morning, everybody. It is a gorgeous Sunday in Indianapolis, Indiana. Sunny, warm. Don't exactly know how warm just yet. Haven't been outside. But it's beautiful. Looking out the window. Trees are green, the flowers are blooming, and it's a glorious day to be alive. I was originally going to talk about a completely different topic this morning than the one we're going to talk about until I happened to wander past chapter 53 in the Tao Te Ching while I was preparing my talk. And I thought, you know, I don't know about everybody else, but for me, the first paragraph of that particular chapter resonates with me very deeply. It's a chapter that kind of sums up a lot of wisdom in a very brief amount of space. And while there are a couple, 3 chapters that do that for me, none of them are kind of as poignant perhaps as this one. And in fact, I use this chapter a lot, both in talking to myself and talking to others. It's a constant reminder to me where to keep my focus and where to keep my feet. Chapter 53 says, if I have a little knowledge walking on the great Tao, I fear only to deviate from it. The great Tao is broad and plain, but people like the side paths. It goes on to say that the courts are corrupt, the fields are barren, the warehouses are empty, officials wear fineries and carry sharp swords, fill up on drinks and food, acquire excessive wealth. This is called robbery. It is not the Tao. I've said repeatedly over the years in various and sundry ways that if I have a little bit of understanding of the Tao, I fear only to deviate from it. I've written a bunch about walking the path. I've talked a lot about walking the path. Some of the articles I've done regarding walking the path have actually enjoyed a bit of popularity, which is wonderful. But the analogy of walking along a path for cultivating the Tao teachings is one that I think has universal resonance. I think it's something that virtually everybody can understand and draw some kind of similarities from based on their own lives. It is absolutely true that our life is a journey to somewhere. And the point, more than anything, is that it isn't the destination that's important in this case. It's the journey itself. Every day that we exist is not a dress rehearsal for a different day or a better day or some other day. It is the only day that we get. And knowing that allows us to put perhaps the appropriate amount of focus and priority on the day we have in front of us. Lao Tzu speaks of a couple of commonalities in the human condition in understanding and wisdom that I'm pretty sure we can all relate to at one level or another. I think for most of us who cultivate the Tao teachings, there is maybe not a fear, but some kind of innate thought, innate knowledge, some guttural feeling that says that we do not want to deviate from the path of the Tao teachings, that our biggest anxiety might be in all of a sudden finding ourselves resisting the flow of the Tao, and in so doing wind up in remarkably inauspicious circumstances. Lao Tzu says that the path is wide and plain, but that the people like the side paths. And that is so true. As people, we want to overthink, we want to overanalyze, we can't believe that anything so important, so fraught with wisdom, so beneficial to us, can be so doggone simple. It's been my experience that people find that simplicity laughable, and in so doing kind of miss the point altogether. By our very nature, we're curious and investigatory beings. We want to know what's down every path, what's in every hidey hole, what's located around every bend and over every hill. But in this particular case, the wandering off down the side paths is not an auspicious and beneficial activity. It's a colossal waste of time and energy that can result in problems. Lao Tzu takes a step off from his personal view, if you will, of the Tao, and talks a bit about the global human condition in the second paragraph, where he says that the courts are corrupt, the fields are barren, the warehouses are empty. Those things are not metaphor without purpose or simile without wisdom. And neither is the next paragraph, where it says that the officials wear fine clothes or fineries and carry sharp swords. They eat and drink excessively and acquire excessive wealth. Those things are a commentary on the very things that prevent us from staying on the wide and plain path of the Tao itself. I've chosen to interpret the term officials here to mean both myself and every other person that I see walking the path with me. And I don't think that interpretation is unreasonable, unfair, or too terribly off, in that when Lao Tzu speaks of the sovereign or the emperor or the ruler, there's always the duality of dealing with both the country or the state or the city or the village and the individual. Once again, I believe in chapter 53 here that Lao Tzu makes the very same point. And in speaking about wearing fineries and carrying sharp swords and eating and drinking excessively and acquiring excessive wealth, what we're talking about are the desires and affectations of the unmoderated life, the life outside of the wide and plain path, the life of the side paths, the places where people go to look for happiness outside themselves. And this is a tremendously profound point, in that human beings, myself included, although hopefully not so much anymore, tend to look first to the outside for happiness and contentment and fulfillment and love and nurturing and everything else that they need, rather than to turn their gaze inward and discover that everything they ever needed they already had with them. Pardon. So to speak of fineries, of beautiful clothing and sharp swords and food and drink and excessive wealth, is to speak of a life lived desiring what we do not have and guarding what we can't keep. It's the life of delusion and illusion. And Lao Tzu goes on to say that these activities are called robbery, that they're not the Tao. In the first half dozen lines of this chapter, Lao Tzu states probably the one thing that we should all think about more than anything else: staying on the path. Because even though the Tao is wide and plain and easy to walk, it is equally easy to fall off of. Pardon. If we manage to fall off the path, that doesn't say we can't get back on. But what will happen is that all of a sudden we'll become the victims of the very thinking that led us to find the path to begin with. The illusions of power, of ownership, of control, the motivations and desires of the ego-driven self, the desire for wealth and for things that we don't own and can't ever take with us, are very often the things that we use to try to make ourselves happy. And no one ever finds real, genuine, lasting happiness in either material possessions or in any of the desires of the material world. There's not a way to fill a hole in the heart with stuff, no matter what the stuff is. It can't be done. The fineries, the food, the drink, the wealth, it is all transient in nature. We may have it for a while as we live on this planet, 70, 80, 90, maybe 100 years. But at some point in time, every one of us is destined to leave this physical existence, and none of those physical acquisitions are going to go with us anywhere. The wealth that we've accumulated, the stuff that we've filled our homes and our lives with, the fineries that we wear, the things that we collected, all are going to stay here when we die. What will go with us is the growth and the wisdom and the knowledge we've gathered from this lifetime. And I realize that not everybody listening to me espouses a philosophy that includes reincarnation or even an existence after death. And for me, okay, I accept those things as being reality. But in truth, for all of us, those things are a hope. And so I can't live my life counting on a more auspicious reincarnation or fearing the action of karma bringing me into a more negative reincarnation. All I can do is try to live today well. When Lao Tzu speaks of the courts being corrupt and the fields being barren and the warehouses being empty, this is in stark contrast to the previous paragraph of the officials in all of their luxury, excess, and finery. The courts, the barren fields, the empty warehouses are the end result of that unmoderated life, of that life lived chasing the desires of the ego self, of that life trying to acquire what it doesn't own to begin with, as opposed to paying attention to the development of the spirit and the growth of knowledge and wisdom. All of those things are reversible, and none of them are set in stone, but there's a logical progression for either following and remaining on the path of the Tao teachings or not. When we speak in terms of karma, we speak in terms of cause and effect. One who remains on the wide and easy to walk path of the Tao teachings nearly miraculously and virtually 100% of the time, as far as I've seen, undergoes a transformation in their lives that's difficult to explain at best and always miraculous to watch. I never cease to be amazed at watching the end product of cultivating the Tao teachings come about. In my own life, as I begin to grasp the various concepts and dig deeper into the teachings and begin to understand things at a deeper level and a more spiritual level, as I mature and grow in the teachings, I'm astounded continually at the transformative process that occurs within me. And I've been doing this long enough that I'm watching the same processes at work in those around me. And to see it is always amazing to me, because it appears to happen so easily, so subtly, almost without cause. But it happens just the same. So without dwelling on the negativity of falling off the path, without taking too terribly much time to talk about corrupt courts, barren fields, and empty warehouses, the positive aspect of remaining on that wide and plain path is so profound, is so good, is so wonderful, that it boggles my mind that one would ever leave it. And yet, we know the people prefer the side paths, the shortcuts. They're looking for a way to get through the trip with all of their stuff intact. I just got a note. I mean, just my computer's complaining. If anybody's having trouble with hearing me, let Derek or I know. Otherwise, I'm going to assume we're okay for the moment. The problems that arise from seeking the shortcuts, from wandering down the side paths, from wandering off the wide path of the Tao, Lao Tzu says is robbery. He says it's not the Tao, and I absolutely believe that. But why robbery? That's once again a strong term for what happens. We all know that whatever flows contrary to the Tao cannot endure for long. Lao Tzu says that word for word. And we have all seen the examples of that happen, I'm sure. But who is it in chapter 53 that's being robbed? Well, the answer is pretty simple. The person who's being robbed is us. And we're being robbed willingly. We're participating in the crime itself when it happens. When we do not walk the wide and easy to walk path of the Tao, when we decide to resist the natural flow of the Tao, all of a sudden we put ourselves in a position where we're open to the vagaries and delusions and issues that the world would bring to our doorsteps. The absence of contentment, the lack of peace, the lack of tranquility, the destruction of harmony in our relationships with others, and an influx of the desires and the negativity that all of us are trying to learn to avoid. A heart that has nothing in it, a heart that once was filled with something and is now filled with nothing, creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Something will fill that heart, whether it is the desires of the ego self, the delusions of this life, or the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the Tao teachings, is completely up to the person who's walking the path. And everybody gets to make a choice, but every heart will be filled with something. For me, I hope to rid myself one by one of the practices and habits and delusions and ego-driven desires that bring me problems and that prevent me from progressing spiritually and in my secular life, from being the person I ought to be. I don't dare claim to be anybody's sage or anybody's master. Only another soul on the path who's trying to get from here to there the best I know how. One of the reasons that I do this is because it helps me to understand by studying, and hopefully my experiences are helpful to other people who are going where I am. I'm hoping with all of my heart that all of you are, like me, kindred souls walking down that path together. And if you are, that's great. And if you're not, you're welcome to join those of us who are. It's not exclusive, it's not restrictive. But the truth is that the path of the Tao is so wide and so easy to walk that most people miss it altogether. I always ask myself why that is. How is it when presented with the knowledge of the teachings and the location, if you will, of the path, that it's so easy to miss? What is it that happens that causes that event to occur? For me, I practically could have fallen down in any direction and hit the path, or at least that's how I feel, and I'm thankful for that. And a great many of the people that I know have done the same thing. It doesn't seem to have required a lot of effort, just a bit of willingness, just the desire to start becoming the virtuous person, the natural person, the person that the Tao teachings talk about. And to take that first step from the beginning down that journey that is a life lived in the Tao teachings. I thought when I very first started teaching Tai Chi, and when I very first started talking here, that people would line up at my front door to hear about this wonderful temple and these wonderful teachings that had done so much for me. But that never happened. I've since come to learn and figure out that the world really doesn't want to be saved. It wants to be left alone. And I suppose that's okay. But it is my most fervent hope that the people who hear what I'm saying will want to at least explore that path and find out why it is that I'm so passionate about walking it, and so hopeful that they'll go with me. To kind of tie things up this morning, the path of the Tao is so wide and so plain and so easy to walk, but people, just because they're people, want to overthink it, they want to overanalyze it, they want to study it, they want to search for shortcuts. Everybody wants something that isn't there in front of them, when what's there in front of them is the best thing for them. I don't know exactly what to do about that, other than to try to shine a light on the path. What I can say is that when we deviate from that path, when we take off on our own, when we think that we know what's best for us and start chasing after the desires of the ego self and ignoring that flow of the Tao, that we only succeed in wearing ourselves out a whole bunch sooner than necessary. It is the logical outcome of resisting the flow of the Tao. To understand that, think about somebody swimming against the tide of an ocean. If one gets swept out to sea away from the beach, it is so much easier to follow the flow of the tide until it returns you to shore, to follow the current, than it is to resist the current, which will wear you out in a matter of mere minutes. Going against the flow of the Tao is very much the same way. But I guess just like swimming in the ocean, some folks have to learn by hard experience, and if that's what it takes, okay. But the other thing is, when we walk the path, we endure. And we don't just endure because we're going with the flow of the Tao. We endure because we align ourselves with the Tao, we become part of the Tao, and the Tao itself endures. I'm not looking to take this physical body on a 200-year trip down the path. What I'm trying to do is to set my spirit on the right and appropriate path, hopefully one day towards enlightenment, and to try to bring a few people with me on the way there. So anyway, it's a joy to share with you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I hope that something I said might have been helpful to someone. Thank you.